The idea right now that the Oklahoma City Thunder are just going to be a one-time champion is as far away from my mind as possible. They have so many picks to deal with. They have so many great young players. This arguably was the worst team that will win a championship for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it until they make a bad move, which Sam Presti has not done in a very, very long time. He's been with his organization for 18 years and has built this team his way and has proven that you don't need to go into a luxury tax situation to have a championship contender. So first and foremost, good for him and good for the Oklahoma City Thunder for being NBA champions.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome back to Loftside Banter. On today's episode, we are going to go over Game 7 of the NBA Finals and the Oklahoma City Thunder winning their first ever championship. We'll go over the NBA Draft, which is coming up in just a few days, so we'll see some changes to rosters almost immediately after the season has ended. And then we'll take a look at the Kevin Durant trade and what we think about that. Please like, subscribe, whatever you can do to help show your support. And please visit us at www.loftsidebanter.com. Again, that's www.loftsidebanter.com. From there, you can go to all different areas for our social media. You can take a look at all the stuff on YouTube. We're available on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and Spotify. So just search Loftside Banter, and you'll find us. A lot to get to in the NBA today, so let's get to that countdown and get this show on the road.
We are on in 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello and welcome into Loftside Banter. This is your host, Andrew Diamantopoulos. And on today's episode, we're going to look at the 7th game of the NBA Finals. Oklahoma City Thunder, your new NBA champions. Game started off looking really good, like we were going to get classic, and then Tyrese Haliburton unfortunately ruptured his Achilles, and because I play a doctor on television, I know that made the game kind of shift in one way, and we kind of knew that early on. It's an unfortunate thing, and it's actually really unfortunate because it looks like he's probably going to be out most of next year as well, and we take a look at what that could do to the Indiana Pacers for next year. Kevin Durant was traded again yesterday, just before Game 7. He's heading to the Houston Rockets, which was a team that had a lot of assets to be able to make a move like this. Does this actually put them over the top to make them a realistic contender in the Western Conference? And then we're going to look at the NBA Draft because it comes up in 2 days. So the season's over, and now in 2 days, teams are going to be already shaping their rosters for next year. Quick turnaround for them. Quick turnaround for the NBA to still be in the news and everything else like that. And then a couple of days after that, the NHL draft will happen. I'll just kind of go over the dates with that, and then we'll talk about kind of what coverage Loftside Banter is going to give you on both of these drafts.
Shot clock is off. They'll run it out. The Thunder have taken the NBA by storm. For the first time, the NBA champion resides in Oklahoma City.
Well, the best team all season ended up being the best team at the end. The Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Indiana Pacers in 7 games to capture their first world title. And it was a hugely hyped game. Even the last episode, you heard me talk about how Game 7s are always special and everything else like that. It was very special for the first 9 minutes of the game, or whatever it was, before Tyrese Haliburton went down with an Achilles rupture. And you could tell immediately that the air kind of goes out of the... Now, the Pacers put up a fight for a very long time. They were leading at halftime. And then that third quarter, they got blown out. That was the deciding factor. I believe the Thunder scored 34 points. The Pacers scored 20. So just one of those things that if you had Halliburton, maybe you have a little bit better shooting, maybe you can score more points. So we knew early on with Halliburton, and for as hot as he looked, because he hit 3 threes almost immediately, at 9 points in 7 minutes, whatever time he played. I believe it was 7 minutes or 9 minutes, whatever one it was. But that third quarter showed a lot of that defense is kind of coming back. There are defensive teams that can win and not necessarily have to put up a bazillion points or throw up 10,000 threes a game. You know, their defense was suffocating a lot of the time in that third quarter, and there was just nothing Indiana could do past that point. So huge hype going into the game. 7 minutes in, you get a little let down with one of the better players gone. And then you start to see why Oklahoma City was where they were. I'm going to do a little research here and let you know exactly how many picks they still have. Because we've all heard it said before, whether it's by myself or whether it was other people in the media, whatever it may be. This team could be the worst version of champions for what they could possibly put together for a run. Because honestly, they have the means to do it. They have all these different draft picks still. Sam Presti's been an absolute genius of putting together a team his way, not spending into the luxury tax, doing it his way. They had Durant, Russell, Westbrook, that is, and James Harden. They were the second youngest team ever to make the finals. They ran into the Miami Heat, lost. Ownership had to get cheap and ship people off. James Harden went to Houston. Kevin Durant went elsewhere. Russell Westbrook eventually goes elsewhere. So they have to rebuild, and they go through a little bit of a stagnant time. They get Paul George at one point. Paul George isn't the answer. After that, they move on to get Gilgeous-Alexander for Paul George, and that's where the rebuild kind of happens. They ship off different things, get first-round draft picks, start hitting on draft picks, and now you have a team that is this young. They're the second youngest NBA champions ever. So the first team they brought was the second youngest team ever to make the NBA playoffs, or NBA finals, excuse me. And then from there, they now have the second youngest team to ever win an NBA championship. So I'm looking at kind of this roster. Alex Caruso was your oldest player at 31. They called him Unk because he was so old. Ousmane Dieng, 22. Lou Dort, 26. SGA is 26. Isaiah Hartenstein, 27. Chet Holmgren, 23. Isaiah Joe, 25. The two Jalens, Jalen out of Santa Clara is 24. Jaylin is 22 out of Arkansas. So they have other pieces in there. They're all in their 20s. The only other person that was in their 30s was Kenrich Williams. And Kenrich Williams was, one of the guys kind of coming off the bench. So, those are your two oldest guys on this team. Now you look at 2025. So in a couple of days, we have the draft. They have the 15th overall pick, the 24th overall pick, so 2 first-round picks this year, and the 44th overall pick in the second round for this year. Then you look at, we're going to go over just the next couple of ones. 2026, they have 5 first-round draft picks. Their own, one from Philadelphia that's top 4 protected, one from Utah that's top 8 protected, one from Houston that's top 4 protected, and one from the LA Clippers that is unprotected. So I think no matter what, even if they bypass or don't even decide to use some of them, because I believe the Utah one can go over one more year, which becomes unprotected after that if they decide to wait. And then all the other ones that are top 4 protected, I don't think you have to worry about those teams being in the top 4. So I think they're going to get those draft picks. So they could have up to 5 draft picks next year in the first round alone. And then they have 3 second-round draft picks in 2026. In 2027, they have 3 first-round draft picks, their own, one from Denver that is a top 5 protected, either 2027 through 2029. If not conveyed, it will be a 2029 second-round pick. So if they decide to wait and wait and wait and wait, it'll move into a second-round draft pick. I don't think Denver's going to be in the top 5 anytime soon. And then the LA Clippers, they have swap rights with them. So if their pick is better, they'll switch. So they could have up to 3, and then 3 second-round draft picks in 2027. 2 first-round draft picks in 2028. And then 3 second-round picks in 2028 as well. They have 2 first-round draft picks in 2029, and then 6 second-round draft picks in 2029. 6. So it's not, again, second-round draft picks, not to say they don't have no value, because they do. You can get good players in the second round. You can get great role players. And then there's obviously outliers of people that play well above where they're selected. So it's nothing to sneeze at, especially having 6 of them. But we'll get into the Kevin Durant trade later, but they just got 5 second-round draft picks basically for Kevin Durant players too. And again, we'll go over that. But you can package these things together to get something in return. So they're not valueless. They're not as high as first-round draft picks. I mean, realistically, anything within the lottery is where teams really want to be. Outside of that, there's a whole bunch of different factors to draft picks. And again, we'll go over all that. But so 6 second-round draft picks in 2029. 2030, they have their own first-round draft pick, and then 4 second-round draft picks. And then, believe it or not, by 2031, they only have their 1 first and their 1 second. So that's when it goes back to normal. So in 6 years, it'll go back to normal for the Thunder. They're going to be able to just keep retooling and reloading and everything else, being able to make moves, even if they don't win back-to-backs, which is very hard to do. Extremely hard to do. They can retool and find the pieces that they need. Now, they just got to be smart about it, but they have a ton of collateral that they can make a mistake or two, which Sam Presti has not done, as I mentioned, in a very, very long time. He's made the right moves for the last few years, and it has culminated into building a team his way and then winning an NBA championship. Just to give credit where credit's due, this team looked the best all year. And, you look at some teams like Houston, who was the number 2 seed, just wasn't quite there to beat an aging Golden State team. This team took every loss in stride, was able to figure out a game plan from that, and move forward. And they didn't lose back-to-back games for quite a while. Or they still haven't, at least at this point. Indiana accomplished a lot. They weren't supposed to be in the finals. And especially after Halliburton went out, they seemed to rally for a little bit. Keep it close, keep doing all that different stuff, go into halftime with a lead, and, you're losing a big part of your offense. You're not making up for that. TJ McConnell is one of those guys that is everywhere on the floor. He can do just about everything, lead the team in rebounds, steals, assists, put up great numbers as far as points, but he's not taking over for Tyrese Halliburton. The players that they have after that are not taking over for Tyrese Halliburton. Pascal Siakam did really well. I mean, didn't have his best game in Game 7, but played really well throughout the playoffs anyway. So he was still one of the leaders and still was able to put all that stuff in. Benedict Mathurin, 24 points, 13 rebounds. So another young, developing player for Indiana to kind of lean behind. The problem is with Indiana now. Now you're without Halliburton for most of next year. And that's going to hurt. So, again, it's going to be one of those situations, and we have a lot of players rupturing Achilles. Dame Lillard ruptured his Achilles. Jason Tatum ruptured his Achilles. Tyrese Halliburton ruptured his Achilles. These guys are all, it's going to come into conversation with the length of the season, and I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to do that. They can handle that part. Whatever. They all wear number 0, which is a conspiracy theory, I'm sure, somewhere. But looking at the other side of the coin for SGA, and the accomplishments that he had this year. He was the NBA MVP this season. He was the scoring title winner. He was the Western Conference Finals MVP. And he was the NBA Finals MVP. It's safe to say, and I don't think I'm going too far out on a limb here, that the NBA is now SGA's. Well, we're past LeBron, we're past Kevin Durant, we're past Russell Westbrook, we're past all those people. The best player or the poster child of the NBA right now is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I don't think that's really up for debate. With all the accolades he just had, with all of the times he stepped up throughout the season, with all the times that he proved that he could be a leader at his age, he's the guy now. Torch has been passed. And to kind of show how far he's risen as far as expectations and stuff like that, during the 2018 pre-draft process, ESPN chose Sean Livingston and Patrick McCaw as his comps. So who they compared him to, what his career could probably look like. And they're two players that have never averaged double-digit points in a single season. Neither one of them did that. I think he's a Hall of Famer now, even if he didn't play another game. He's proven to be the top echelon of this kind of NBA mode they're in, like the type of game that it is now. He has the highest average points per game for any NBA champion. He this season was 32.7 points a game. The next closest was Michael Jordan in 92-93, who averaged 32.6. So he outscored Jordan by 0.1, but it is a bigger average. That's without debate. This team was built by Sam Presti in that front office. It has players on it that have come in around the same time. There weren't veterans that you were adding to. There weren't superstars that you were bringing him on for. You know, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, both kind of brought in the same time. Actually, those two were drafted the same year. But if they didn't have SGA, I don't think the collection of players without SGA wins an NBA title. So he's the number one piece. Then everything else was built around him. And for the record, the idea right now that the Oklahoma City Thunder are just going to be a one-time champion is as far away from my mind as possible. They have so many picks to deal with. They have so many great young players. This arguably was the worst team that will win a championship for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it until they make a bad move, which Sam Presti has not done in a very, very long time. He's been with his organization for 18 years and has built this team his way and has proven that you don't need to go into a luxury tax situation to have a championship contender. So first and foremost, good for him and good for the Oklahoma City Thunder for being NBA champions. Until proven otherwise, I'm going to die on that hill. Oh, but Andrew, you're repeating yourself. You're saying the same thing. It's because nothing is going to change. Unless they start making bad moves, which hasn't happened, with this young team and all the picks that they have and all the moves they can make and everything else, they can stay out of the luxury tax and still compete every single year. Now, there will eventually come a time where these players are going to either be paid or whatever the case may be, but it depends on how much of it. But the good thing is that gives small market teams something to shoot for. Teams that don't want to go in the luxury tax, that don't have owners that want to pay that extra money, that won't want anything else. Having talked to Ian and Dan Berheyer, I agree with them that there's still a need for superstars on rosters. SGA is now a superstar. And we go into that debate of what makes a superstar. You should be able to walk into a room and everything should stop. That's a superstar. That non-basketball players, all that stuff. Blah, 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 blah. We've gone over all that. SGA is now a superstar. So you have a superstar on this roster. We see superstars get traded more often in the NBA than any other league. They are pretty, I don't want to say easy, they're pretty likely to move around because of the structure of a salary cap and going over first apron, second apron, all the stuff. If you want to hear about salary cap and get down into it, Google it. I'm not going to give you all that stuff. Maybe someday, not in this episode. But with all the things being talked about, and I said at the beginning we were going to talk about the Kevin Durant trade, which we're going to go into now. Something I didn't mention was the Jrue Holiday trade from the Celtics to the Portland Trailblazers, which wasn't in the opening, but has happened just right now. And so I'm going to put that in there, or in here, if you will, to go over that as well, because we're seeing all this movement, and we've been able to see all this movement for superstars and stuff like that. Now, Kevin Durant and Jrue Holiday are not on the same tier. I want to make that clear. But Kevin Durant, even at 36 years old, going to be 37 when the year starts, is still a bona fide superstar. And him moving from Phoenix to now Houston, which is a great move for the Houston Rockets, because you bring in a guy that knows how to win, is a veteran, is one of the best players ever to play the game. He's now helping teach the kids. And they really didn't give up the one piece that everybody wanted, which was Jabari Smith Jr. They ended up giving up Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the number 10 pick in this year's draft. So now Phoenix has an extra pick there, and 5 second-round picks. And as mentioned before, second-round picks are a dime a dozen. They're whatever. You can get good value for second-round picks. It just, the thing that a second-round pick is basically good for is to package in something to add a little bit more to pull off a deal. You can find players in the second round of the draft. Let's not make mistakes about that. But typically speaking, it's first-round picks that you want, and typically lottery picks. So the 10th pick is in the lottery, so Phoenix will get that. They'll probably end up packaging a ton of these second-round picks to help make over their roster, because they're going to be doing that. So the Houston Rockets get to partner KD with Jabari Smith and Fred VanVleet and Alperen Sengun. I believe he's Turkish. I believe he's their Turkish center. Played really well last year, almost 20 points a game and over 10 rebounds a game. A similar game style to Nikola Jokic. Not, again, don't get it confused that he's not Jokic, but he averages 20 points a game, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. So, I mean, he can pass really well, rebound the ball, score at will if he really wants to. Fred VanVleet was the only player on that roster, on the Houston Rockets roster, that was over 28. So now you get another veteran presence. You get a guy that's going to make probably one more good run. Don't forget, they finished second in the Western Conference. They just lost to an aging Warriors team in the first round. So they needed something like this. Coach Udoka got an extension. You can say whatever you want for the type of person that he is, why they got rid of him in Boston, everything else like that. I think it's worked out for both areas. The Celtics have won a championship already. Joe Mazzulla, whether I agree that he's a good coach or not, has a championship under his belt. And then from there, Udoka has gone someplace else, been able to reestablish himself as a player's coach, and has done really well with young talent. From the other side, with the Suns, Dylan Brooks, who I've never been a fan of. I hate his attitude. I hate all the things that he does as far as a player. Now, he's talented. Can't take that away from him. 14 points a game. Okay. What he brings is, again, still determination and brings attitude and brings all that stuff. Some guys, you need to have that. And Dylan Brooks has used that to his advantage to be able to play in the NBA and be successful. Jalen Green was obviously the big piece. A former a former number 2 overall pick in 2021. He averaged 21 points a game. The problem was, in the playoffs, he disappeared. He only averaged 13 points a game. He wasn't shooting that great from beyond the arc. He wasn't putting it all together. Now he's still 23 years old. And first time through the playoffs, completely understand, having some off nights and everything else. He struggled this year in the postseason. So you're getting a more proven person who understands the spotlight of the playoffs and understands what it takes to win. Kevin Durant, whether you agree with it or not, and your own personal record book or anything else like that, is an NBA champion with the Golden State Warriors. He did go with the Thunder, having run into Miami and LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. So he understands the playoffs. The thing is, he's going to be 37 at the start of the year. So there's obviously not a ton left from his prime as far as his mobility and everything else. He can still create his own offense, which we still see is in the upper echelon of the league. So there's still value, plenty of value there. It's the veteran leadership that I think is going to mean the most. Can the defense still hold up with the loss of Dylan Brooks and stuff like that in Houston is the bigger overall question. Kevin Durant has never been an extreme top tier defender. And again, 37. I'm just going to keep throwing that number out there. Amen Thompson, who's still with Houston, will undoubtedly be a key part to solving whatever issues this trade creates. Thompson, who got votes for Defensive Player of the Year, kind of surpassed Brooks as their perimeter stopper last year. So he's the guy that's going to have to step that up, and he's probably not going to score as much. But, the Suns picked up, like I mentioned, Dylan Brooks and Jalen Green, 10th overall pick, 5 second-round draft picks. Most of their salary, if not a good majority of their salary, is being spent on wings. I believe they have 6 players that are shooting guards or wings on the roster now. That all have started, that all have higher salaries, that all have everything else. So there's still going to be some movement, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan Brooks is one of the ones on the way out of Phoenix again. Now, whether they choose to decide, trade Bradley Beal, which would make sense as well, to get that salary off the books. Because right now on the roster, it's Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Grayson Allen, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and you could probably consider a few other guys on the roster in that position as well. Damian Lee, Ty Washington Jr., all these guys play the same position. So, again, there's got to be some movement going around. I don't know what value a lot of them still have. Grayson Allen's probably not that much. I mean, he averaged over 10 points a game last year. But, again, he's not going someplace. He's still 29. But he doesn't have a huge value, especially with injury history. Damian Lee, not a guy that's been a starter and somebody that is a difference maker in this league. So, I mean, Bradley Beal's your guy. And he's 31, has his own injury problems, doesn't play the greatest defense. So, and he had a down year, 53 games, 17 points a game. His career average is 21. So, what do they get from all this? Where are they going to make the moves? What players are going to come in to change things? Because this roster was a disaster last year, especially with the fact they didn't make the playoffs. They've started to change it all up. Kevin Durant gone. Let's see what happens from here. But I don't understand the roster moves. Now, you can only get whatever you can. Again, the return for Kevin Garnett was not probably as much as what people thought they could get. And they probably found that out pretty quickly when shopping him around. We're going to go into a little ad from the sponsors, a little read, and then we'll come back, talk about the Jrue Holiday trade, and then we'll get into some NBA draft kind of news and stuff like that. This episode is brought to you by the Massachusetts Pirates of the Indoor Football League. Looking for a family-friendly night out that's anything but boring? Experience the high-octane action of indoor football, where every seat makes you part of the game. With tickets starting as low as $18, even front row seats are affordable. Be a part of the excitement. If a game ball lands your way, you get to keep it. How cool is that? And then after the final whistle, stick around for an autograph session with the players for just $15. Don't miss out. This is football like you've never experienced before. Come see the game in the Songus Arena in Lowell, Massachusetts. And for ticket information, go to www.masspiratesfootball.com. Again, that's masspiratesfootball.com.
The thing to start watching is, does Boston start selling off pieces? This obviously is the beginning of that.
Yeah, the most important thing to know is where they were with the second apron. And the second apron is a punitive restriction, the inability to make trades. They were roughly $22 million over the second apron. Chip away, chip away, chip away. This gets them to $18 million in the Jrue Holiday trade. You get back an expiring contract in Anthony Simons. You shed the $72 million owed to Holiday in years 3 and 4. And now it puts you in position, whether it be a Kristaps Porzingis potential trade on an expiring contract or another move to basically shed that salary. We're looking potentially at Boston saving potentially $200 million when we get through the next few weeks here. So it's a significant move for the Celtics. It's certainly a significant move for the Trailblazers as far as how both teams were able to get a deal done.
And under new ownership in Boston as well. Go ahead, Wendy.
We've got this fascinating thing happening in the NBA right now where these Western Conference teams are clawing each other's eyes out, trying to get to 8th or 9th or 10th place. This is a move that takes on $100 million for the Blazers, trying to see if they can get to 10th. And in the Eastern Conference, you have really good teams that are dealing with the fallout of this Achilles tendon problem, who are trying to rip off pieces because they realize that they can't be so expensive if they're not going to be real contenders next year. We've already seen a couple of deals that look like this. Keep a very close eye on Boston in the next few days, and Indiana and Milwaukee, teams that are dealing with these Achilles tendon problems.
And that clip comes from ESPN. That was Bobby Marks first talking, and then the kind of lead in from Mike Greenberg, and then you heard Brian Windhorst right at the end there. So kind of breaking down what the trade meant for the Celtics with selling off pieces. Jrue Holiday was the one that had more value out of the two. Still had plenty of value with his defense and stuff like that. His scoring was way down this year. Shooting was way down. So it was one of the things as far as shedding that salary, as we heard Bobby Marks kind of go over, how much it saves the Celtics making this move. Now, Kristaps Porzingis is the next person that is probably on that block. From what I've heard, and as I've mentioned in other shows, he has almost zero value. So you're going to have to give him up with some assets to shed his salary. Now, he's 29 still. Kristaps Porzingis is 29 still, and still can score, still can be one of the guys that can kind of lead your team one night. Injury history is the biggest factor right now with Kristaps Porzingis. But back to Jrue Holiday. He was traded to the Portland Trail Blazers for Anthony Simmons and 2 second-round picks. Now, I get excited as a Celtics fan and I look at it and I go, okay, you got something out of this. You got a guy that is going on an expiring contract and is 26 years old. Averaged 19.3 points a game last year. Almost 5 assists, a little under 3 rebounds as well. Now, he was shooting a lot. He was shooting a lot of threes. Now, but that fits into the Celtics' game plan. A lot of threes, a lot of everything else. So, I mean, he fits into that. He's not going to be shooting as much. That I can tell you he's not going to be doing here. He's not going to be shooting as much. He shoots at a 38% for his career for three-pointers. So, I mean, he hits quite a few of them. But, career average 15 points a game guy. Again, he's not going to be getting all those shots that he was in Portland on a bad team. He's coming to a team that needed some scoring. His defense is suspect, but Joe Mazzulla does really well with helping younger guys learn a defensive strategy a little bit better, and they've always had a good defensive team, at least under Mazzulla here in Boston. Now, this is the second time that Jrue Holiday was traded to the Portland Trail Blazers. He was traded from the Milwaukee Bucks in the Damian Lillard trade in 2023, and then he was later moved to Boston after trading him to Boston not too far right after that trade. So they moved him right on to Boston for Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams III, 2024 first-round draft pick that was Bub Carrington, who now plays for Washington, and a 2029 first-round pick. So now towards the end of last year, Portland had a pretty good record for the team that was basically put together. They had 23-18 record, ranked 3rd in the league in defensive rating. So, I mean, they bring in a guy that's going to help this defense be better than it was. And, the Celtics get a kid that, hey, he's going to come in, he's going to help your scoring while Tatum's out. He averaged shooting 9 threes a game over the past 3 seasons. So there's not like a one-off season. 9 3-pointer attempts per game over the past 3 seasons. But it's a valuable skill in the Celtics coach Joe Mazzulla's 3-point heavy offense. So, I mean, this works out really well for all of that. But I'm shocked that Brad Stevens can still get these things done. Because you're bringing in a much younger player. You're saving yourself a ton of money. You're getting a guy that's going to help you score this season on a contract year. Now, if you're telling me that somebody that's coming up to a contract year isn't playing harder to average more points per game, to play better so that way he can get that big payday, then you're delusional. So he's going to play harder trying to get that, whether the Celtics want to retain him or not. But he brings in scoring that you were missing from Jrue last year. The problem is they're going to have to teach him to be a better defender. But I'm shocked that they were able to get Anthony Simmons out of this. And I'm shocked they still got 2 second-round picks out of it. And as I've mentioned, second-round picks are thrown in to help complete these things. But I thought you were going to have to give up something more than just Jrue Holiday and give up the rest of his contract. So, again, I'm not criticizing Portland for anything because, again, it's still up in the air what happens. Anthony Simmons can come in here and suck. We don't know. But at this point in time, what you got back for Jrue Holiday was crazy to me. And it's not so far out there that you're like, this isn't the Desmond Bane trade where it was like so many different unprotected first round picks and all that stuff. This is, okay, they got something back while still giving up the rest of his salary. They didn't have to retain any of his salary, nothing. So it's a win for Boston, in my opinion. I think it's a win for both sides. I think Portland is still getting a guy that's going to help you improve over than what you had. Now on to the NBA draft. So the NBA draft is going to happen on Wednesday the 25th. And I believe the first round is on Wednesday at 8 p.m. So Wednesday the 25th, 8 p.m., first round. Then Thursday the 26th, second round is at 8 p.m. The Dallas Mavericks' improbable pick to be the number 1 overall selection is obviously going to be Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg is the best available player at 1. And I think they would be foolish not to take him. We'll probably do a very in-depth post-draft episode that we'll go over some picks. We'll go over some guys that we really like and everything else like that. So we'll see kind of what is done Wednesday and Thursday, and then there'll probably be a show where we break down some of the picks and stuff like that. Ones that I really like, some that maybe, we'll hopefully have Dan and Ian back on as well. But I do think there are people that could have been the number 1 overall pick if Cooper Flagg wasn't available. Now, Cooper Flagg's going to go to Dallas, like I said. Dylan Harper from Rutgers is the projected second pick to San Antonio. Now, one thing I'm going to mention here is how long of a leash do we still give Wemby? Victor Wembanyama has not really improved San Antonio all that much in his first couple of years. And he was a surefire, couldn't-miss prospect. And I'm not saying he's played terrible, because he hasn't. One Rookie of the Year, played 71 games, 21.4 points a game his first year. Last year, only played 46 games, 24.3 points a game. Now, my question is, with another number 2 overall pick, and theoretically they pick up Dylan Harper, how long before we start going, Wemby isn't the guy that's going to be a franchise leader? 2 seasons in, I understand. It just seems like there wasn't a ton of improvement, and I realize he was injured and didn't play a lot of the games last year. So, when do we start questioning it? I would say after this next season, if there's no real improvement from 1 year to the next. For his first year, they were 22-60. Greg Popovich was still the coach. This season, they were 34-48, so there was a little bit of improvement. But they only climbed 1 spot in the Western Conference. Dylan Harper, point guard, shooting guard, 6'6" guard, so wing, basically, can handle the ball pretty well. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Brunson is kind of an NBA comparison. We'll see what kind of happens and what situation he gets put into, but he's been pretty much considered the number 2 overall pick since people knew Cooper Flagg was going 1. Number 3 overall is to the Philadelphia 76ers, so I don't want anybody to get offended. But whoever they pick, which it seems like they're in the kind of VJ Edgecombe out of Baylor, or Con Knippel, which is a great name, or Harper's Rutgers teammate Ace Bailey. But whoever the 76ers pick, I hope fails. Because I don't like the Philadelphia 76ers. I hated the whole trust the process thing. They made such a big deal out of it because they were so terrible for quite a few years. Or for a few years. I shouldn't say quite a few. And then they bring in Joel Embiid, who is one of the most injured players I've ever seen. Doesn't play when it matters, misses playoff games, and Philadelphia fans defend him like it's their life. And Joel Embiid is a very good basketball player when he actually plays, which is not a lot. That's the thing that would get me the most, is if he was on the Celtics or whatever, and the fact that he doesn't play. The injury factor for a lot of people, and for me in particular, is huge when going out and getting new players. If there's an injury history, I hate the idea of going, well, if he's healthy, and I do it just like everybody else, because I want to trick myself into believing that, hey, this person who's been hurt most of their career is just all of a sudden going to be different in a different setting. And sometimes it happens, not a lot. It's a very low percentage. So if you want to say that Embiid is this great player and everything else like that, I don't think he's ever going to win. And if I were the Philadelphia 76ers, I would get whatever I could for him, because he's not going to play. And I don't think his value is that high. I think there'll be teams willing to take him. Of course. He's a former MVP. Why wouldn't you? It's just when you know those big moments and you're going to need him to be this type of player, he isn't there. And until I see it otherwise, that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to die on that Embiid sucks hill. And it's not because of his skill. It's just his injury history. He sucks because he can't get on the floor. Philadelphia fans, come tell me what you guys see in it. Because if I don't see him on the floor, it means nothing. He can't get by the Celtics. He hasn't been able to. He hasn't been able to get into... I don't think they've even been to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, I mean, what kind of winner is he? Injuries happen. I get it. I'm an older guy. I hurt all the time. And trust me, if I stepped in a court with Joel Embiid, I would be dead. I would never score a point. But if you're making that and you're making that type of money, you're the face of a franchise, you're all these things, at some point in time, you got to call it out like you see it. And that is, he can't get on the floor. And when he does, he's a risk to get hurt. Sorry, not sorry. That's what it is. So Philadelphia gets to add somebody at the number 3 pick. And some consensus is VJ Edgecombe out of Baylor, like I mentioned. I watched him in the tournament. He didn't really show me a ton. He's kind of a Westbrook type, the type of he can rebound, he can pass, he can score. I didn't see it a ton against Duke. I didn't see it a ton, in the tournament. I just didn't. But he has that comparison to him. So if he fully develops into what people are saying, having a hopefully not as angry Russell Westbrook type player on your team is beneficial. Right? Charlotte is picking 4th in a disaster of a franchise if I've ever seen one, just as much as some of the other ones. But Charlotte has not been able to put together anything since Jordan has taken over. And again, that's not calling out Michael Jordan. It's just they're the opposite of OKC. OKC has made moves. All of them have worked. Charlotte has made moves and none of them have worked. Projected to take Duke freshman Con Knippel. Shooting guard, small forward, came from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Chris Mullin, Jared Dudley type. Again, not the greatest. Chris Mullin, fine as a number 4 overall pick. If you're telling me he's a Jared Dudley type at the number 4 overall pick, I'm probably telling you I don't want him. I like Jared Dudley. I'm a Boston College guy through and through. I love Jared Dudley, I should say. And what he brought to teams towards the end where it wasn't necessarily playing, he was the veteran leadership and everything else. But we don't want to worry about that as the number 4 overall pick right now. You want Chris Mullin. That is a huge gap between those two. You're getting either Chris Mullin or Jared Dudley. Those are your options. Well, I'll take Chris Mullin. But again, these are just NBA comparisons. This is what people and scouts are saying they're sort of like. But again, that's a very big gap between those two players. And I'll do the 5th overall pick. 5th overall pick belongs to Utah. They're looking at Ace Bailey, the kind of wing other Rutgers freshmen coming out in this draft. He has comparisons to Rashard Lewis, Paul George. Hopefully not the injury history that those two have, but a good comparison there. I think Utah has improved, even though they haven't necessarily jumped up the standings. Now I make the same comparison to San Antonio and go, well, what has Victor Wembanyama done? Well, Utah didn't have Victor Wembanyama, and so Ace Bailey's kind of in that conversation. Trey Johnson, freshman out of Texas. Jeremiah Fears, the freshman out of Oklahoma. Then you kind of get down towards, Oklahoma City has 15. They're projected right now at Joan Behringer, power forward center from France. So probably a stash guy, because probably not going to need him next year. In that range too, Colin Murray Boyles from South Carolina. Derek Queen, the center from Maryland that hit that big shot in the NCAA tournament. You get down to the end of the first round. Orlando at 25 has Walter Clayton right now, which I would love to see the Celtics pick up. They have Celtics at 28 taking Jace Richardson, the son of Jason Richardson from Michigan State. Also Maxime Renaud, the French center that played for Stanford, is a senior out of Stanford. 7'1" guy, probably a body the Celtics could use as well. And then around that 32 is Danny Wolf, Chaz Lanier from Tennessee, Micah Peavy from Georgetown. Those are kind of the guys in that range as well. And again, we'll go into a lot of players that we like, dislike later on. Hopefully, again, Dan and Ian are coming back on for that. But I don't want to go into every single pick because I'll bore you all to death. And we'll make this a little bit shorter of a show. Normally it's about an hour. Right now we're kind of at about 50 minutes. So I think I've made your ears bleed quite enough with the end of the NBA season, going into the draft, a couple of big trades that have happened. So it's an exciting time because it kind of just goes right into one or the other. And with the letdown of Game 7 just because of the Haliburton injury, where it wasn't as exciting that maybe people wanted it to be, now you have the draft and you're already trying to figure out what the best course of action is. And not only do I like the draft and kind of what's coming back, because you're seeing a lot of guys make differences and you need to draft well. You can't just draft guys and go, oh, they're a project. We went through many, many years of the NBA draft where everybody was a project. Oh, if he projects to be this, you need to draft guys for the things that you want. And the Celtics got some, help with some picks at the end of the last draft. But, these teams are trying to do all this different stuff of projects. Hasim Thabit was a project and the number 2 overall pick, and then he was in the G League within a couple of years. So, teams got to try to get away from that as best they can. Obviously, you're picking later in the first round. You have some ability to go, okay, this is a guy we can kind of build up a little bit, everything else. But you have to win through the draft. I think that's kind of back at this point. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what kind of moves are being made. Obviously, some big trades are already going down. And then from here, let's see what the new season will bring us. So congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Congratulations to SGA on a remarkable year. Congratulations to the Indiana Pacers taking in the 7 games. Unfortunate how it kind of played out at the end with your best player in Haliburton. Pascal Siakam, great playoffs. We'll see what kind of happens in the Eastern Conference with a lot of these injuries. But no matter where you are, whether it's a morning, afternoon, or night, have a good one. And then we will see you later on.